Let's talk trains, shall we? How will the government fix British rail? That's a bit like, you know, explain the universe to me. It's that complicated. Rail passengers in England and Wales face a new 5% price hike from today, despite train cancellations being among the worst in 10 years, with thousands of services cancelled in the past year. It's been one of the worst performances in the rail industry since records begun. So why on earth are we now paying more for a worse service? Joining me now is our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, who has all the answers to these questions. Take it away, Jack.
I wish I had some of the answers, Dawn, but let's just put some of this rail fares into context. Of course, so they've gone up 5%. The government judged that based off the consumer price index and the inflation figures from the year before. So the consumer price index inflation figure this time last July was around 6.8%. So the Westminster government as well as the Welsh government decided to set the increase of rail fares for the next year at around 4.9%. So 5% rail fare increase. Put that into the context of roughly what that means in real terms. Say you're getting an annual season ticket from Woking to London, that's going to add around another £190 to your fare. If you're getting maybe a flexi season ticket in between Liverpool and Manchester a couple of days a week, that's going to add around £92 extra per year. So many campaign groups for the railways saying that this is a necessary pressure on people's pockets. As you say, it's possibly turning people away from the railways more onto the roads. But what do the Great British public think of these rail fare prices? Have a listen to what some people have told us.
I think at the minute nothing's really changed on the trains, so it's not really fair to raise the prices.
We are students, so we are always struggling over here because we have to meet our expenditure fees and our rents and everything. So in that case, when the train fare goes higher, it's more difficult for us to survive here.
I would be quite happy for the rail fares to go up if they invested the profits in the infrastructure so that the rail network and the rolling carriage was consistently good standard and that the trains ran on time.
Yeah, so Labour's Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Hay has said that this fare rise will be tough for passengers to stomach, but the Rail Minister, Hugh Merriman, said last month that the government had attempted to essentially split the difference between the UK taxpayer and the fare payer in relation to these prices. We know in the year up to March last year, the government had spent around £4.4 billion subsidising the railways, and we know from the likes of the disruption that we've had alone, just from the strikes, around £775 million has been lost in revenue. So it's no surprise maybe for the likes of the government, both of course in Westminster and Wales, that they've had to put prices up.
Oh, Jack, thank you very much. You haven't cheered me up, love, sorry. That's Jack Carson in Birmingham there, talking expensive rail fares. Oh, dear. Right, luckily my panel are still with me. One of them has a theory on this. I'm going to pretend to understand what she's saying, but I didn't. In any case, I'm going to talk to Rakib first. Look, they're not very good.
No.
They're very expensive, the most expensive in Europe.
It's not value for money, is it?
It's not value for money. That's putting it mildly. What do we do, though? What do we do to fix it? Come on.
Well, I think, firstly, in terms of these rail fares, this is ever increasing. And we didn't mention there in Scotland, I think it's going to increase by 8.7%.
8.7%, good luck, Scottish people.
Which is absolutely remarkable. I think we need to look at a new model when it comes to how British rail works. Post-Brexit Britain shouldn't be about British rail users paying extortionate fares and then much of that ending up in the public coffers of European countries.
That's a fair point, actually, yeah.
Which is remarkable, really.
All their trains are running really well, though, aren't they?
Indeed, and I think that anyone who's fairly well-travelled in Europe will look at the rail fares. They're much cheaper, more punctual, I'd say, in terms of services, and they're cleaner as well.
Yes. Yeah. Cleaner, cheaper, efficient.
Indeed.
I mean, God almighty, who'd have thought it? Now, obviously, one of the big answers to this is to nationalise it, which I think is one of Labour's ideas. But, you know, I don't want the government running my bath, let alone the train company at the moment. I'm old enough to remember British Rail back in the day, which was even worse. Emma has a solution.
So I don't think it's about nationalisation versus the current model, and those are the only two options on the table.
Right.
There are ways and ways of taking it out of the insane, broken franchising model that we have at the moment. Partly, it could be run by not-for-profit cooperatives, for example, so that at the moment, these are private companies whose number one duty is to their shareholders, not to rail users.
We'd spotted that.
If we want a train system in this country that puts rail users first, then it needs to be run by and for rail users. That can mean doing it through the government, but could also mean doing it through an arm's length distance cooperative that is set up and run in the benefit of rail users. And here's the thing, we have, at the moment, you've got the rail infrastructure run by one set of people, different rail companies bidding for these franchises, but they can't run against each other. They get these franchises, they've no investment in the rolling stock, which is part of the huge, huge problem. The investment in the actual rail infrastructure is very poor. We know that our climate is changing, we're seeing more flooding. That's one of the things that's devastating a lot of the infrastructure.
Use trains.
We need to use these trains much, much more. And at the moment, this short-termism is putting people off of the railways and into their cars. It's the opposite of what we should be doing.
Right, OK, just very, very quickly, Ricky, we're running out of time. The problem is, I mean, the train companies at the moment, it would cost a fortune for us to take control.
It would.
Yeah.
Where's that money coming from?
No, absolutely. And I think that the point that Emma's making there, that this isn't going to be a matter of full-blown renationalisation of rail, is there's not-for-profit cooperatives. Essentially, more public-private cooperation could help on this front in order to keep the costs down. But one thing we know for sure, the current model is simply not sustainable.
And you don't need to buy them out, you need to time them out, essentially.
Right.
Reduce the franchises. If they fail their franchise conditions, and let's face it, an awful lot of them are failing their franchise conditions, then they can be taken away from them. That's when you can step in without...
There needs to be greater
public money.
accountability. That's the key.
That's for sure, yeah. OK, Emma is taking over running the train. You've got my vote. Brilliant. Go for it. Good luck.